In October 2016, an unsuspecting father in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, found himself entangled in federal-level drama after dropping his 24-year-old daughter, Chelsea Wilson, off at a TD Bank branch for what he thought was a job interview. Unbeknownst to him, Wilson had no plans of working at the financial institution. Instead, she robbed the bank while her father waited outside in his SUV. When Chelsea returned to the vehicle with a large amount of cash in her possession, she allegedly told her dad that she had landed the job and received an advance. And even though she was wearing a wig, a hat, and sunglasses, her father apparently didn't find the story suspicious. According to law enforcement, Wilson had entered the bank with a handwritten note demanding all the $50 and $100 bills in the drawer. She made off with $300 total. The evidence from this and 3 other similar recent robberies in the area led federal investigators to Chelsea's home. She reportedly admitted to committing numerous thefts and said that she used the money to buy groceries. Records show that a woman of the same name and age was released from federal prison in 2019, indicating that Wilson served some time behind bars for her crimes. Number 22. Ashley Bush. 33-year-old Ashley Bush was 31 weeks pregnant when she came across an online ad offering baby items to expectant mothers in need in October 2022. She certainly qualified as being in need and made plans to meet up with the woman who posted the ad, Lucy, at a library in Gravette, Arkansas. Bush was happy enough to receive some much-needed items for her baby, but she was even more excited when Lucy offered to set her up with a job interview for a work-from-home position. On the day of the scheduled interview, Bush's fiancé Joshua Willis dropped her off at a convenience store where Lucy had agreed to pick her up. The plan was for Lucy to take Bush to the interview, then drive her back to the store where Joshua would come, get her, and take her home. But Bush never returned from the interview, and soon enough, law enforcement got involved. As it turned out, Lucy's real name is Amber Dawn Waterman, and she's from Pineville, Missouri. The 42-year-old currently stands accused of luring Bush to her death with the ad offering baby items and the offer of a job interview, which turned out to be fake. A few days after Bush was reported missing, her charred remains were found in a remote area near Waterman's home. She had been fatally shot, doused with gasoline, and set ablaze in an apparent attempt to destroy evidence. According to federal prosecutors, Waterman purposely sought out a pregnant woman as part of a twisted plan to steal a baby and raise it as her own. She allegedly drove across state lines to kidnap and kill Bush, and unfortunately, neither of the victims survived in this case. Waterman is now facing a federal charge of kidnapping resulting in death. She is also facing a charge in connection with the fate of Ashley's unborn child. The accused killer allegedly maintained her innocence with a cover story during questioning, even though her husband, Jamie, reportedly admitted to helping his wife hide Ashley's body and is also facing criminal charges. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. Number 21. Shameik Dunn. In March of 2022, a 26-year-old Alabama man named Shameik Dunn was accused of assaulting a 19-year-old woman who was interviewing him for a job position at a tanning salon in Trussville. The victim told Jefferson County deputies that Dunn had suddenly attacked her during the interview. He then fled the scene, but he wasn't too hard to catch, considering the fact that he had put his real name and contact information on the job application. According to law enforcement, the victim suffered multiple injuries, including cuts and bruises. Officers picked Dunn up at his home in Clay on suspicion of multiple charges, including abduction, and booked him into the local jail in lieu of $90,000 bail. Updates have not been forthcoming, leaving the current status of the case unclear. Number 20. AJ Gupta. In August of 2023, a 55-year-old Toronto man named AJ Gupta was accused of assaulting at least 2 female job candidates during interviews in an office building in the city's North York neighborhood. The victims had responded to online job postings by Gupta, who represented himself as a business owner who was seeking new employees. According to police, Gupta instructed the interviewees to meditate and perform breathing exercises during their interviews, at which point he assaulted them. He was arrested on suspicion of assault, and police said that they believe there may be more victims. Law enforcement encouraged any other potential victims to come forward, and the case appears to be ongoing. Number 19. Dominic Breedlove. In December 2018, a Florida man named Dominic Breedlove allegedly shoplifted from a Kohl's store in Spring Hill after a job interview. According to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, Breedlove arrived at the store shortly before 3:30 p.m. and proceeded to the Human Resources Department for his interview. After the interview, he allegedly made his way over to the shoe department and stole a pair of Nike sneakers without a tag. Breedlove then went to his car, found a Kohl's bag from a previous shopping trip, and returned to the shoe section where he stole another pair of shoes. A loss prevention employee caught on to what he was doing, and he was arrested in the parking lot with 2 pairs of stolen shoes valued at $150 total. Needless to say, Breedlove did not get the job. According to state records, he's currently on probation until 2029 for drug and other theft-related offenses. He had also previously served prison time for robbery and failure to appear while out on bail for a felony, proving that he was no stranger to crime at the time of the job interview. Number 18. Marielle Vaccaro Rodriguez. During the pre-dawn hours on New Year's Eve in 2021, a police officer stopped a Cadillac that was seen driving erratically in Leesburg, Florida. The woman behind the wheel, identified by law enforcement as 28-year-old Marielle Vaccaro Rodriguez, seemed confused. She told the officer that she was on her way home from a job interview at a gentleman's club in neighboring Marion County. Rodriguez allegedly admitted to drinking 2 vodka Sprite cocktails, according to a police report. She was unsteady on her feet and performed poorly on a field sobriety test. She also took 2 breathalyzer tests, which turned up blood alcohol content levels of 0.212 and 0.215, more than 2.5 times the legal limit for driving in the state of Florida. Needless to say, Rodriguez was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. She was freed from the Lake County Jail after posting a $1,000 bond, but the outcome of the case is unclear. Number 17. Alberto Saavedra Lopez. Over a 3-month period in 2016, a bank employee named Alberto Saavedra Lopez allegedly stole around $5,000 from a Bank of America branch in Cottonwood, Arizona, where he was working at the time. According to court documents, surveillance cameras captured footage of him taking the bank's money and then depositing it into his personal account using an outdoor ATM. After falling under the suspicion of his superiors, Lopez abruptly quit his job and moved to Tucson without telling anyone where he was going. He simply fell off the radar and stopped answering investigators' calls, and his whereabouts remained a mystery for the next 2 years. Lopez was finally located in 2018 after he applied for a job as a 911 dispatcher with the Cottonwood Police Department. A warrant for his arrest, stemming from the investigation into his alleged theft, was discovered during a background check. An officer with the agency called Lopez and invited him to the station for what he thought was a job interview, but instead of getting hired, he was arrested on suspicion of bank robbery. A jury found Lopez guilty of theft, and he was sentenced to 4 months in jail, followed by 3 years of probation. Number 16. Nicole Palmer. In early 2017, a 26-year-old Florida inmate named Nicole Palmer skipped out on a women's work release program in order to go to a job interview. According to authorities, she boarded a public bus in Lake Worth and failed to return to custody later that day. After several weeks on the run, Palmer apparently had a change of heart about living on the lam and decided to turn herself in. She surrendered to the Broward County Sheriff's Office and was booked into custody on an escape charge. According to the Florida Department of Corrections, participation in work release programs is reserved for inmates who are nearing the end of their sentences, which means that Palmer would have likely been released soon if she had just stuck with the program. State records show that she was convicted of the escape charge and consequently spent another 2 years behind bars before she was finally released back into the free world in March 2019. Number 15. Cassia Shelton. In October 2023, 911 operators in Muncie, Indiana, received a call from a local car dealership employee about a 2013 Kia Optima that had just been stolen off the lot. The staff member told responding officers that he was preparing the car for a test drive with a waiting customer when the dealership's phone began ringing off the hook. Nobody was on the other end the first time he answered, but the phone rang a second time, so the employee exited the Kia and went to answer it again while he was away. The customer allegedly drove off in the car. Investigators tracked the vehicle to Indianapolis, more than an hour's drive away, using license plate reading technology. They continued to follow the car's movement as it returned to Muncie. In the meantime, they identified the suspect as 20-year-old Cassia Shelton through a financing application she had submitted shortly before her visit to the dealership. According to police, Shelton initially lied about her identity when police paid a visit to her home, but eventually admitted to stealing the Kia in order to drive to a job interview at a strip club. She allegedly treated the situation as a joke and said she shouldn't be arrested because she'd returned the car by leaving it in a mall parking lot next door to the dealership with the keys inside. Shelton also claimed she didn't understand why she was being arrested, since she was no longer in possession of the vehicle. She was arrested on felony counts of auto theft and identity deception, but updates have not been forthcoming, leaving the outcome of the case unclear. Number 14. Livia Ramos de Souza. In 2023, 19-year-old Livia Ramos de Souza went to an interview at a business in Rio de Janeiro called Icon Investimentos in hopes of landing a job so she could help support her family. She had no idea that the company was scamming its customers by selling them cars that didn't exist, and was immediately put into computer training along with other candidates. As soon as she arrived at the interview, 4 hours into the training session, the authorities raided the building. Livia and 17 other trainees between the ages of 18 and 30 were detained on suspicion of fraud. The teen's mother, Cristian Pinto Ramos, told local reporters that her daughter was innocent, stating that Livia didn't sign anything, didn't make any sales, and no money was deposited into her account. Cristian further explained that she was at work when she received a frantic call from Livia about her arrest. Hoping to secure her daughter's release, the concerned mother went to the police. Despite her efforts to free Livia, the young woman spent more than 2 weeks languishing in a jail cell with some of the most hardened criminals she had ever crossed paths with, including accused killers. According to news reports, Livia found the ad for the position at Icon Investimentos on a job-seeking website, and according to her family, she had no reason to suspect that it was an illegal operation. After finally being released, Livia described her time behind bars as a nightmare. She was grateful when a judge cleared her and 14 of the other trainees that she was locked up with of any wrongdoing. They were released from custody based on a lack of evidence and were free to carry on their lives and their job searches. Number 13. Lynn Rogers. British teenager Lynn Rogers didn't notice when 36-year-old Scott Singleton began stalking her in 1991. Singleton had noticed the young woman while visiting his girlfriend who lived near the Rogers family in southeast London. Lynn found out about her stalker in the worst way imaginable later that year, when Singleton lured her to a bogus job interview at Charing Cross railway station. When she failed to return home, her concerned family reported her missing. 5 days later, Lynn's murdered remains were found dumped along a remote roadside in East Sussex. At the time of her murder, Rogers had been searching intensively for a job. She had submitted her resume to over 100 employment agencies, including a travel company called Africa Hinterland. The agency just happened to be located inside the same shopping center as a business owned by Singleton, who took Lynn's resume from a communal postbox that the company shared. Something about the job that Lynn was going to interview for on the day of her murder seemed off to her father and boyfriend. They warned the teen to be careful and even urged her to skip the interview, but she was so excited by the job prospect that she went anyway. Lynn promised to call her worried loved ones afterwards, but unfortunately, that call never came. Upon learning about the young woman's disappearance, a taxi driver contacted the authorities and said that he had seen Lynn getting into a vehicle matching the description of Singleton's car. Nobody knows exactly what happened between then and when Lynn's body was found, but according to prosecutors, she must have realized at some point that she had been duped. Her body was covered in horrific injuries, including a brutal blow to her head, as well as grip marks on her neck and arms from being restrained and strangled. Rogers also had a bite mark on her chin which matched Singleton's teeth. Based on the amount of damage to her body, investigators speculated that she had fought for her life during her agonizing final moments. Singleton denied having any involvement with Lynn's murder despite the mounting pile of evidence pointing toward his guilt. He was ultimately found guilty of the charge and sentenced to life in prison. Number 12. Mark Anthony Roman. When 21-year-old Mark Anthony Roman took his girlfriend to a job interview in May of 2022 and it didn't go as expected, he allegedly robbed the business. According to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office in Texas, Roman's girlfriend had already undergone one interview. It went well enough for her to land a second interview, but the employer rescinded the job offer after she text messaged him with sexting allegations. She showed up for the second interview anyway, and Roman tagged along. The employer later told police that he met the couple out in the parking lot where Roman said that they were going to discuss his girlfriend's working conditions. When the employer clarified that he was no longer interested in employing the woman, Roman allegedly lifted his shirt to reveal a handgun in his waistband and demanded cash. It's unclear whether Roman made off with any money, but luckily the employer managed to safely back away from the situation and call 911. He also made note of the couple's license plate, which helped lead to the identification of Roman as the prime suspect in the case. Roman was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and booked into the Bexar County Jail in lieu of $50,000 bond. While the outcome of the case is unclear, records show that he is no longer in custody at the jail and is also not serving time in the state prison system. Number 11. Ryan Dixon. In 2016, a man named Ryan Dixon landed a job interview with a Des Moines-based taxi company called Trans-Iowa. He hoped to land a position as a taxi driver, but he drove to the interview under the influence and crashed into two taxi drivers' cars in the parking lot, damaging both vehicles. Dixon then staggered into the building and encountered dispatcher Barbara Freeborn, who later told local station KCCI that when she asked Dixon how she could help him, he didn't seem to understand anything she was saying. Police were called to the scene where they tried getting Dixon to undergo a field sobriety test. He was allegedly too intoxicated to even attempt the exercises, even though it was only 9:30 in the morning, and the breathalyzer reportedly registered a blood alcohol content of 0.273, more than 3 times the legal limit for driving in the state of Iowa. According to law enforcement, Dixon admitted that he'd been drinking until around 2 o'clock in the morning in the hours leading up to his interview. He went to the hospital due to the effects of the alcohol, then was released and drank a fifth of vodka about an hour and a half before the interview, which would explain his highly inebriated state. Number 10. Stephen Bodley. When 26-year-old Stephen Bodley applied for a job with the Apopka Police Department outside Orlando, Florida, he mentioned some past inappropriate conduct on his application. Then during his interview, he admitted to the same crime. The confession came during a voice stress examination during which Bodley was asked to take a pre-test questionnaire. When asked, he admitted to having illegal relations with a young person years earlier, and when the person facilitating the test asked him to go into further detail, he did. Armed with the disturbing details, detectives located the victim's mother, who confirmed that the victim and Bodley had had a close relationship. The victim reportedly told someone from the Florida Department of Children and Families about the abuse, which occurred over a roughly 5-year period that ended when Bodley was 19 years old. Not surprisingly, Bodley was arrested for his crimes. His lawyer tried persuading the judge not to allow his confession during his trial, but the request was denied. Not only is Bodley never going to be a police officer like he'd hoped, he was convicted of the abuse and is now facing up to life in prison. Number 9. Shanisha Taylor. Arizona woman Shanisha Taylor left her 2 young children in her SUV on a hot day so that she could attend a job interview on March the 20th of 2014. The interview at a Scottsdale insurance agency lasted for over an hour and had gone well for the 35-year-old, who at the time was struggling to provide for her children. Upon returning to her 2006 Dodge Durango, Taylor was met by the authorities, taken into custody, and charged with 2 counts of felony child abuse. Her 2 sons, aged 6 months and 2 years, were taken to the hospital after temperatures in the car had risen to a reported 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but they hadn't suffered any injuries. A bystander had called the police after seeing the baby in the car crying and sweating profusely. News of her arrest spread from Scottsdale to the rest of the US, as did her mugshot. which showed Taylor with tears rolling down her cheeks. While some were enraged by her actions, others were touched by her story, and a crowd-sourced fundraising campaign gathered $115,000 for her. She spent 11 days in jail and was released after a Good Samaritan posted her bail. Taylor pleaded guilty to 1 count of child abuse and was sentenced to 18 years probation. Maricopa County prosecutors agreed to drop the charges against her provided she attended a diversion program and used the campaign money to set up trust funds for her children. The original prosecution was reinstated, however, after she'd missed 2 deadlines to contribute money to the trust funds. Number 8. Laura Browder. In 2015, a single mother was arrested in Houston, Texas, for leaving her children at the Memorial City Mall food court while she was attending a job interview. Laura Browder had brought lunch for her children aged 2 and 6 at a McDonald's before leaving for her interview, which took place about 30 feet away from them at a nearby Starbucks. Bystanders then saw the children crying and contacted the authorities. When Browder returned to the food court after reportedly accepting a job offer, she was taken into custody and charged with child abandonment. The young mother would explain that she didn't have time to find someone to watch them due to the suddenly scheduled interview, but insisted that the children had always been in her line of sight. Browder also feared that the arrest might hinder her employment opportunity, but the charges against her were ultimately dropped. Number 7. Fatal fitness test. In December of 2012, a tragic mishandling of job applicants for South Africa's regional KwaZulu-Natal Traffic Police Department resulted in several deaths and hundreds of hospitalizations. The country has had a high unemployment rate in recent years, and consequently more than 150,000 men applied. Of them, over 34,000 had been sent text messages telling them they'd been shortlisted for the job. They were split in 2 groups on 2 different days so that they could take their fitness test at Pietermaritzburg's Harry Gwala football stadium. To meet the requirements, they had to complete a 2.4-mile run within 30 minutes. What followed was a chaotic event described as horribly disorganized by one of the participants. Over the course of 2 days, tens of thousands of applicants showed up at the stadium, which was isolated from food and drink shops, for what were only 90 available jobs. By the time that they got their turn, many applicants had to run on an empty stomach, severely dehydrated, and in temperatures of 93 degrees Fahrenheit, with the sun beaming down on them. 230 collapsed from heat exhaustion, and 6 of them died. A 7th man, out of desperation, took his own life by slitting his throat when he didn't make the required time. The politician responsible for setting up the mass job interview offered an arguably callous confirmation of the incident, claiming that the young men could not cope with the weather conditions. Number 6. Hini Humorin. Nigerian woman Inayobong Umarin, also known as Hini Humorin, was last seen on April the 29th of 2021 as she was heading to a job interview. A few days prior, the 26-year-old woman from the town of Uyo had tweeted out that she was desperate for employment. A friend who'd learned that she'd gone to an interview in the Airport Road area then reported her missing. The hashtag #FindHiniHumorin was created, and social media users began investigating the circumstances of her disappearance by reviewing her public online conversations. It emerged that Humorin had spoken to a man later identified as Uduak Frank Akpan, who'd claimed to have a job for her as a secretary. He'd lured her to his house and abused Humorin prior to killing her and burying the body in a shallow grave. 20-year-old Uduak had gone into hiding after being named as the woman's murderer, but was ultimately apprehended and confessed to the killing. Number 5. Helena Thurm. In June of 2016, Helena Thurm, aged 25, was on her way home from a job interview that would have led to her working in marketing, which was described as her dream career. Thurm was crossing Manchester Road in Altrincham, Greater Manchester, England. Glenn Wall, a man in his early 30s, was done with work for the day and driving home to enjoy a barbecue with his wife. As he approached an intersection, Wall drove straight in a left turn only lane when a traffic light was on amber. In doing so, he plowed into Thurm, killing her. A trial ensued in which Wall placed the blame on the young woman for stepping in front of his vehicle. A judge, however, would conclude that he'd gambled on the amber light instead of stopping at it and, while he hadn't exceeded the speed limit, was driving too fast given the circumstances. Wall was convicted of causing the young job seeker's death by dangerous driving and handed a 2-year prison sentence. Number 4. William Purvis McNeil Jr. In October of 2020, Maryland man William Purvis McNeil Jr. was arrested for abusing a male victim during a fake job interview. 26-year-old McNeil presented himself as the face of a company offering an employment opportunity that was contracted by the government. He used fake profiles and cell phone apps to make it look more realistic. McNeil then took the victim, whose identity wasn't disclosed, to his apartment under the false pretense that he'd be conducting the interview. According to the Baltimore County Police Department, on the first day, he asked his purported applicant to perform push-ups and sit-ups as part of an agility test. He told him that a camera mounted on the ceiling was being used by military personnel to monitor his progress. The following day, McNeil conducted a fake prostate exam and abused the victim while he was in a compromising position. The authorities were contacted, and after McNeil was arrested, he told investigators that his actions were part of his plan to turn straight men gay. His mental health was questioned, but there have been no updates in that regard. It's believed that McNeil had run the scheme in the past, and the police released his mugshot so that other victims could come forward. Number 3. Andrew Jackson. In 2017, a man who sought a position with the Greater Manchester Police in England was arrested and banned from driving after showing up drunk for his interview. As soon as Andrew Jackson, aged 48, began answering the GMP interviewer's questions, a smell of alcohol was noted on his breath. Jackson, of Barlow Moor Road, Didsbury, raised further concerns by mentioning that he'd had trouble parking. The interviewer continued with the questions for about an hour, but before concluding, made an excuse to leave the room and consulted a police officer. When asked if he'd been drinking by a traffic officer, Jackson claimed that he didn't have any alcohol on the day, but that he'd shared a bottle of wine with his wife the previous evening. He was tested with a breathalyzer and proven to be over the limit. Jackson was arrested and charged with drunk driving, to which he'd ultimately plead guilty. He was ordered to pay a fine of $320 and banned from driving for a year. Today's topic was requested by Andres B. Pick, Necky 1000, Dogpool 2729, and Cadillac DeVille 5828. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Alberto Saavedra Lopez. On January the 4th of 2018, Alberto Saavedra Lopez was arrested for felony theft during a job interview with the Cottonwood Police Department in Arizona. 32-year-old Lopez, a former Bank of America worker, had been suspected of stealing $5,000 between July and September of 2016. After the theft was reported, Lopez quit his job and moved to Phoenix. He reportedly refused to cooperate with the authorities investigating the theft incident by missing appointments and not answering his phone. About a year later, Lopez applied for a dispatch job with Cottonwood Police, unaware that probable cause still existed for his arrest. Law enforcement contacted him, set up the interview, and took him into custody upon his arrival. Could these job interviews have gotten any worse? How about those who've already established their careers? Find out after number 1, because we've got 10 people who destroyed their own career lined up next. Number 1. James Derrick Lovelace. The United States Navy Sea, Air, and Land Teams, commonly referred to as Navy SEALs, is one of the most prominent special operations forces in the world. They carry out sensitive missions such as intelligence gathering in conflict zones or eliminating high-level targets in virtually any type of environment known to man. Becoming a Navy SEAL is a strenuous endeavor that involves graduating from a 6-month-long training course called Basic Underwater Demolition, or BUDS. It's basically the world's toughest job interview, with a dropout rate of 75%. After a few weeks of intense orientation, candidates go through the even more exerting first phase, which is physical conditioning. It's when most voluntary dropouts occur, as it involves grueling runs, swims, and drills in frigid conditions. The training gets harder as the weeks progress, culminating in the infamous Hell Week. designed to push would-be SEALs to their mental and physical limits. It's during this 4th week that candidates get almost no sleep while doing 20 hours of physical exercise. BUDS is so intense that records from the non-profit Navy SEAL Foundation indicate that since 2013, more SEALs have died in training than in combat. Blackouts routinely occur during drills in swimming pools, as a high level of comfort with water is required for becoming a SEAL, with exercises including being submerged for extended periods of time or swimming with the hands tied and legs tied. On May the 16th of 2016, 21-year-old Seaman James Derek Lovelace died during his first week of training as a result of an evolution during combat swimmer orientation. It involved candidates treading water in full fatigues and boots while wearing a mask filled with water. According to fellow trainees who remained anonymous for fear of retaliation, Lovelace had been bullied by an instructor who'd repeatedly dunked his head underwater, something that's strictly forbidden. His face had reportedly turned purple as he struggled to stay afloat with the instructor pushing him under. Lovelace emerged from the pool conscious, but then became unresponsive and died. A San Diego medical examiner ruled it a drowning homicide, as the actions and inactions of the instructors and other individuals involved were excessive and directly contributed to the death. The Navy carried out its own investigation and cleared the instructor, much to the outrage of Lovelace's family, who stated an intention of pursuing legal action. The worker of a Rancheritos Mexican food restaurant in Draper, Utah, quite literally pissed away his chances of ever working in the food industry when he was recorded by a customer urinating into a drain in the back of the kitchen. The incident occurred in December of 2019, and a video of it went viral. Customer Robert Talivokoala later told a media outlet that he'd gone up to the window after receiving no response when trying to place an order at the drive-thru. Talivokoala attempted to get the attention of the unnamed male employee but was reportedly ignored. He began recording the encounter upon realizing that the worker was actively peeing in the kitchen. The health department subsequently confirmed that the incident had taken place and Rancheritos was temporarily closed for sanitation. The employee in question was fired and his food handler permit was revoked. He'd been at the establishment for less than 3 months and was reportedly doing a great job. The worker provided no explanation for why he hadn't gone to the bathroom. In October of 2023, a similar incident went viral, earning tens of millions of views across Chinese social media and beyond. It involved a man who reportedly worked for Tsingtao, China's second largest brewer, and who was caught on video urinating into a tank of raw ingredients at one of the beer maker's plants in Pingdu, a city in the Shandong province. Tsingtao officials responded in the aftermath by saying that the contaminated batch of malt had been sealed off from use and denied that the man had been employed by the plant. Many of those reacting to the incident on Weibo claimed that it had put them off the beer, while others reacted with humor, as one netizen commented, "I've always said the beer here is like horse pee. I've always said the beer here is like horse pee. Turns out I was wrong." Shares of Tsingtao Brewery experienced a sharp fall on the Shanghai Stock Exchange, but subsequently recovered. Number 9. Anthony Orlick. A New York City lawyer was fired from his firm in the spring of 2023 following an incident that occurred on West 35th Street and 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. While passing Brooklyn singer Lizzie Ashley on the street, Anthony Orlick snatched an emerald wig off the woman's head. The wig was sewn into Ashley's hair and the yank caused her neck trauma. She recorded the ensuing confrontation with Orlick and the clip, which she captioned with, "There's demons in NY, I swear," went viral on TikTok. The singer asked Orlick if he was going to apologize, to which the latter replied, "For what?" before grinning at the camera. Ashley demanded to know the reason for his outburst, told him that it wasn't funny and concluded with, "Do you hate women or something?" Internet sleuths determined that Orlick, who wasn't arrested for the assault, worked for Leader Burkhorn Kalau and Silverstein LLP. While the firm didn't name Orlick directly, it subsequently revealed on social media that an associate involved in a non-work related incident that was circulated on social media was no longer with the firm. Number 8. Kylie Rexanne Modisette, a former teacher at Huntington Middle School in Texas, was sentenced to 2 years of probation in the summer of 2016 following a plea deal in which she admitted a Class A misdemeanor distribution of harmful material to a minor. While employed by the school in December of the previous year, Modisette sent 2 nude photos of herself to a male teenager who'd once been in her English class. The student deleted the photos from his phone, but not before a number of his peers had taken screenshots of them, which they then distributed to other students throughout the school. Prior to admitting her guilt, Modisette, who was at the time in her late 20s, had been arrested and released from jail on a $1,500 bail. She was fired from the school, and in light of the scandal, her opportunities of finding employment in the education field were basically reduced to 0. Number 7. Matthew Erskine. From June of 2017 through August of 2020, a lawyer from Arlington, Virginia, used sugar daddy websites to have relations with at least 6 teenage girls from 3 local high schools. According to his online biography, Matthew Erskine entered active duty as an Air Force officer in 1996 and finished his law degree while working at the Pentagon's Defense Information Systems Agency's Communications and Operations Branch. In the summer of 2017, he began accessing sugar daddy websites where he leveraged his wealth to have relations with teenagers. His promises to them ranged from rent-free apartments, luxury cars, and first-class travel to cash, designer clothes, and accessories. He reportedly preferred group relations and would provide drugs and alcohol for the teens during their trysts, which he'd often record without their knowledge. Erskine was also reported to have made arrangements sometimes for them to be picked up from high school and be taken to his apartment. One of his victims suffered a mental breakdown after contracting an STD from the lawyer. After one victim moved out of state, he flew her back to Virginia for the holidays and paid her for intercourse. Erskine was reportedly fully aware that what he was doing was wrong, as he'd messaged one of the teens at one point to say, "None of this is worth risking my career for. I have parents in their late 70s that are relying on me to take care of them." The man, who was in his 40s at the time, threatened to sue the victims should they consider going to the authorities. The lawyer's activities came to light after the friend of one of the teens alerted the Fairfax County Police in May of 2019. The FBI got involved in the investigation and Erskine was arrested. During the legal proceedings associated with his case, the lawyer maintained that he'd thought the girls were all 18 or above. Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Kane stated in court that any semi-intelligent adult would know instantly that they were underage, since they talked about issues with their parents, getting grounded, or college plans. Erskine was indicted on multiple charges, including trafficking of minors and commercial exploitation. His license to practice law was revoked before he ultimately pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 160 months in prison. Number 6. Omar Masood. A well-respected doctor within the Cleveland Clinic hospital system was fired and arrested in the winter of 2022 after being accused of abusing his patients. According to local officials, 66-year-old Omar Masood groped at least 3 patients during exams that occurred between March and November of 2022. Masood was a gastroenterologist and the former chief of hepatology for the Cleveland Clinic. The officials reportedly took swift action after receiving complaints about Masood, but the details of the doctor's transgressions remained unclear. His position was terminated and he faced 3 counts of gross imposition and 3 counts of unlawful restraint. As a hearing of the matter approached on October the 16th of 2023, Masood pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and requested a competency hearing. Number 5. Jim Houck and Jim Palmer. In late January of 2016, Jim Palmer, the CEO of prominent advertising agency Campbell Ewald, was fired after an offensive email surfaced. It was initially sent out at the San Antonio branch of the agency in October of 2015 by creative director Jim Houck, who reportedly answered to Palmer. He sent out the email announcing that it was officially Ghetto Day in the SA and encouraging teams to share the news that ghetto music, malt 45s at lunch, as well as drugs and escorts were legal all day at the branch. Houck also included a vintage image of two black men in an urban area saying, "Word, my cerebral gangsters." Houck was fired shortly after the email surfaced. Military-focused insurance company USAA, an 8-year-long account holder and one of Campbell Ewald's biggest clients, terminated its contract in the incident's wake. USAA motivated the decision as its desire to find a company more aligned with its values and culture. Palmer apologized for the offensive message, adding, "This email is in no way reflective of who we are as an agency and what we stand for." Palmer's overall handling of the situation and his failure in salvaging the relationship with USAA led to him being replaced as CEO within days of the scandal. Number 4. Alexander Alyukayev. In 2008, the body of Russian reality star Oksana Aplakeva was found by the side of the road after she'd been thrown from a moving car. Her killer, who was never identified, was determined to have returned to the scene to cover up the body in the aftermath. In 2018, the police uncovered new evidence, which led to Aplakeva's body being exhumed for further forensic tests. DNA results indicated that the reality star had been abused post-mortem, not by her killer, but by the morgue technician who embalmed her. 37-year-old Alexander Alyukayev, who'd been working at the morgue for 12 years and was still employed when his actions were discovered, was promptly fired. A few months after the incident, he told the media, "I could not argue against science. I have not been able to find a job," while also revealing that his wife had left him and changed her number. The man couldn't be legally punished for having relations with Aplakeva's corpse, as Russian legislation didn't cover such matters. Number 3. Lexi Larson. In June of 2022, a Denver woman took to TikTok and shared with her followers the $20,000 pay increase she'd received after she'd left her job at a marketing agency where she was earning $70,000 for a position in the tech industry. The content would backfire with dire consequences when Lexi Larson's new employers saw the video. Management was reportedly displeased with Larson publicly disclosing her salary and talked to her about the TikTok account. While they admitted that she hadn't violated any concrete policies, company representatives told her that her activity on the platform was a security concern. Larson was fired, and she subsequently announced her termination on the platform, stating, "TikTok cost me my job." The woman also revealed that she was eventually able to return to her old job following a tearful call to her former manager. Number 2. Sarah Jury. In the spring of 2023, a primary school teacher from Indiana spoke to the Daily Mail and revealed that she'd recently been fired for selling her nudes on OnlyFans. 41-year-old Sarah Jury had been teaching for roughly 2 decades and was working with Starbase, a collaborative program between the U.S. Defense Department and schools. The single mother of 2 had a variety of side jobs, including teeth whitening, nutrition coaching, and tutoring students outside school. Jury's activity on the adult platform was hidden behind a paywall, and those who wanted to access her explicit content were required to message her. Jury told the Daily Mail that a person she identified as a right-wing blogger had paid for her photos, which they then sent to her employer and posted on social media. Within 24 hours, Jury was called into a meeting and her employment was terminated. The woman revealed that she'd never been fired before and recalled, "I just wanted to get out of the building. I felt scared, fearful, hopeless, and confused." Jury maintained that she wouldn't have joined OnlyFans had her teaching salary been better, but admitted that she felt empowered on the platform. In the aftermath of her termination, she decided to dedicate herself to OnlyFans full-time and progress from uploading nudes to filming content with other performers. Number 1. Edwin Chandraharan. A head gynecologist at St. George's Hospital in South London was fired in February of 2020 after behaving inappropriately towards several of his trainees. One of the female medics, who was only identified as WX, went to a conference with Edwin Chandraharan in 2015. While driving to their destination, the senior doctor claimed that he wanted to give the woman special training and asked that their relationship be defined as commander and commandee. Chandraharan asked that WX keep their interactions in that regard a secret, as others wouldn't understand, but maintained he'd similarly mentored other trainees in the past. While in the car, Chandraharan asked the woman a question from a book he'd given her to study, and when she got it wrong, he suggested that she should take off an item of clothing. Upon arriving at the hotel, he told WX to come to his room so that they could practice a presentation. Regarding her previous mistake, Chandraharan demanded that the trainee get fully naked in front of the mirror and look at herself while he watched. He told the young woman that a mistake could mean someone's death and that she needed to have a scar to improve her skills and avoid future errors. The doctor didn't touch her, and looking back on the situation, WX felt that it was a form of mental control. They went to dinner, and afterwards, Chandraharan told her that he was a massage expert who could make her climax by only touching her back. He gave the trainee a coin and said that she could give it back to him when she was ready to accept the pleasant experience. WX stated that Chandraharan's behavior, given the fact that she was alone with him in a small town, had made her feel like an antelope trying to run away from a lion. WX reported him in the aftermath to management at St. George's University Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, but was too scared of repercussions to her career and didn't file an official complaint. Chandraharan was given an informal warning in 2017. 2 years later, however, it emerged that another female trainee, identified as YZ, had experienced a similarly disturbing experience with the doctor at a conference. While they were working in his hotel room, he repeatedly tried to massage her, and YZ made it clear that they weren't going to have relations. Chandraharan apologized and reportedly claimed it was the first time in years he'd got his diagnosis wrong. Later on in the trip, he told the woman that she'd look back at the incident in 5 years' time and see it as a missed opportunity. WX and YZ, along with other women working for the trust, formed a WhatsApp group and brought formal allegations against the doctor. After he was fired for gross misconduct in 2020, Chandraharan tried to sue the trust, alleging that he'd been unfairly dismissed and racially discriminated against for being British Asian, claiming that senior doctors had pressured the victims into making up stories about him because they were racists who were envious of his success. In 2022, an employment tribunal dismissed his case and criticized the disgraced doctor for his conduct. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have to look for a new job every 6 months or for a new partner every 12 months? Let us know in the comments section below.